Hi, this is Will Your Werewolf. I'm on the eating, meeting, greeting and defeating of Joe Rogan part 3. Now this is a really long one, I'm afraid. I was going to split it into 2 parts, but kind of just want to get it out of the way. So this is my story of meeting Joe Rogan, and let's see how it turns out. This is part 3, by the way, so hopefully you've listened to part 1 and part 2, otherwise this won't make sense. Could you please subscribe and please like and ding the belly thing for notifications, and if you've got a comment, even if you hate it, please tell me. Other than that, I'm just going to carry on with my story. I caught them quickly, hiking their way out, following the contour lines of the hills. They knew their stuff and how to travel, and the quickest through this type of country. Now, I was a quadruped, evolved for this kind of shit, so I would be moving up and down the hills at will. Cameron might run a marathon each day in 3 or 4 hours, but I could do that in about 35 minutes in this form. I could keep that up for 300 miles. I've tried it when running in Russia. Let the games begin, Cameron. Also, who knew what Joe was capable of? I wondered if Cam would be, do the sensible thing and just ditch Joe so he can make his escape. These humans, though, they do that thing of caring about others and putting them before themselves. I now could hear them charging through the forest. The scent track was really not needed. They were being so obvious and noisy, so I ran slightly above them on the hill. They were making their slow-assed way around. They were already struggling to maintain the pace, and the frustration of the undergrowth was just a further annoyance to them. I ran through the underlying bush as though it wasn't there, sure-footed and almost quiet. I ran at a comfortable distance where I could listen to them start to fail, and I knew at one point that they would have to stop. They would have to take a break. This they did. They pulled up and sunk low into the undergrowth. Joe was drinking from his flask on his belt while Cameron told him to ditch anything he didn't need to carry. They both still had their bows and placed them down and rummaged through pockets and kit to relieve themselves of any extra weight. I had no idea why they had not gone to their phones yet. Maybe I was fortunate and they had no signal. Perhaps they had not brought a satellite phone, but I thought that would almost be impossible with the wealth of experience that was held by them. They were not keeping an eye out for me, and with the fresh falling heavy rain masking my movement, I wandered up to a discreet distance where I could see them both. They were pretty well hidden in the bush, but the frantic manner in which they were acting allowed me to see them. I wandered to a point that I thought I could catch them doing the whole Robin Hood bit before they loosed an arrow at my ass. I wanted no more to do with digging those things out of my hide. I needed them to waste some of their hours now, so I needed them to notice me. I found a little gap where I was silhouetted in the sun. I sat on my hindquarters like a good dog and growled at a volume high enough for the 2 men to hear. They froze as they heard the sound. It was a beautiful moment where the 3 Fs kicked in at the sound of the monster. I whimpered and cocked my head as Joe's head turned towards me slowly. Cam's eyes moved to the bow that was carefully resting slightly off the floor at arm's length. And then he moved. In his eyes it was fast and beautiful to behold. He threw himself down on the ground, recovering the bow, and drew and released an arrow very smoothly and quickly at the spot where I was sitting. A remarkable bit of technique to pull off with the bow in my untrained eyes. It was so good that I genuinely wondered if he'd practiced this move. I moved a fraction of an inch as the arrow flew past the spot my throat had been. It was so quick that it even tested my reactions. The arrow cut a few stray hairs from my pelt and then disappeared into the scrub. He had now dropped the bow and dragged a pistol from his belt and shot 5 blasts in succession at the point where I was sat. I'd already started to move and 4 missed. The 5th hit me in the arse. I ignored the shot and found cover. This guy was good. I think the pistol was a mistake for my lack of assumptions. Of course, Cameron would be carrying a firearm. This is America. I was not sure if Joe would be carrying, but I would assume so to be on the safe side. This was going to add a little more work to the night. I was going to have to take a few to give one. Once I'd disappeared, the men started to hustle again. They'd dropped a lot of the kit now to run. I would go and have a gentle peruse of what they'd left. Maybe they'd done something stupid like leave a critical item like a gun or hopefully all of their arrows. I doubted it though. It would let me understand what I now dealt with. I slowly made my way to the spot they'd just left and had a sniff around, turning into my human form to have a good rake through the pockets to see if there was anything of note left in there. Oh dear, someone had ditched some ammo. Well, that was a little relief. I was hoping that at least one gun now had little or no ammo in it. The rest of the kit was nothing of note, so I got back to my animal form to continue the chase. I knew they had another 2 hours at this pace to get back to the point of safety, and I assumed they had probably contacted someone at this point, and I hoped that the person didn't have a helicopter, or this could be over with me being in the losing bracket. Not good. Now I chased, making enough noise that they could hear me behind them. The brush tore apart around my perfectly adapted giant form. I did nothing to hide my progress through the woodland behind them. I just ran at a lolloping rate, enjoying the chase. Let me try to explain what it's like for me. Now, if you are a human being, and an educated human being, you must know of the great actor Arnold, or whatever Nezza. You know, he was an action icon in the 90s, and I love his film. My two favourites are No, Not Twins and Kindergarten Cop. Although I did enjoy Twins because it's got my other favourite actor in it, Danny DeVito. I love that guy. Matilda is an absolute work of art. The films I'm talking about are Predator and Terminator. I am a rare beast in that I do prefer Terminator 1 though, not Terminator 2, but that's because I love the T-1000 being the badass Arnold instead of that little silver twink thing in the next one. Anyway, let's try and get to the point. Well, in Predator, watch it. After it, you will be a goddamn sexual tyrannosaur. You see, the Predator chasing the group through the jungle. The Predator is invisible. They cannot see him, but they can sort of sense him. So scary, huh? I feel like the Predator at this moment. I know where they are through my incredible senses. My hearing pinpoints them, and I can hear how they feel and how they're doing. I know it seems weird that I can hear how they are doing. I don't get it either, but at this point, they weren't doing so well. I can smell them, and oh my god, can I smell them. I don't know if you know, but humans sweat through their skin when doing stuff to keep themselves cool. So to all us other animals, can you imagine how you fucking stink? I cool myself through my tongue and mouth as a wolf. No point wetting my pelt to allow evaporation to cool me. So you reek of, well, stinkiness. Following you is like following a particularly bad fart as it goes beneath the duvet. Not one of my things. So all that was to serve some description, which I didn't really do. My apologies. What I sense in my head is somewhat like that part of the Predator. You know, he sees them because of their heat signatures. I mean, to be honest, it's a bit rubbish if you think about it. The ultimate Predator can only see levels of heat. I know some of you Predator nerds will make an argument here about Predator canon and so forth, but in that movie, that is the one he uses, so I'm talking about that one. That means that I am better than Predator myself. I can sense them with multiple senses. Covering themselves in mud would not help, apart from maybe reducing the pong that they create. Using my pinpoint knowledge of where the creatures were, I tormented them, making them constantly frightened and run on and on. I thought that this constant intrusion into their running and panicking world would eventually get them to give up. These guys were not going to stop. I spent most of my time finding different places on the trail to allow them a moment of wonder. I would travel silently from point to point so that I could now be seen where I should not be. I appeared running to the left of the running men. The cracking of twigs and boughs gave my position away purposefully. Cam stopped. Joe carried on. Shots were fired. They missed. There was only one gun, it seemed, and the bullets were running low or gone. This was the next 20 minutes of this poor men's lives. They had dumped everything now. This was going to be over shortly. I now ran ahead of them to set up a gentle surprise for the lucky two. That gentle surprise would be me, mother lovers. I knew the line they were charging along and knew where they would be when they ran into my ambush. They were out of breath, charging, and generally doing that thing of just focusing on running away from shit. They had shed more stuff as they ran, and it littered the trail as cast-offs and unwanted items. I held a little bit of high ground and that they would have to pass on their journey, and waited just out of their line of sight to reveal myself. Joe was in the lead now, struggling to keep one foot in front of the other. He was running in somewhat clumsy gait. Cam was behind him, pushing Joe verbally and keeping a manic eye about him. This must be a fantastic feeling for them. They were fighting desperately and hoping to escape and get their precious lives back. The predators are now the prey. I was the big bad wolf, and it was my job to behave in an appropriate manner and rob them of those respective lives. Then they burst from cover, and Joe's first sight was me. He stumbled to a stop, dead, and faced me, open-mouthed. Keep going, came the cry as Cam ran into the back of him to try and get his friend to move on once more. Joe did not move. He was the immovable object. He just stared at me and was unable to do more than that. Cam, who had run into the spot looking back, pushed Joe forward and turned confused to face this man for a moment. Come on, man, we have to move. I've no idea where it is. Joe stood and pointed at Cam and me as though in some kind of comedic movement. Cam ran his eye along the outstretched arm from the shoulder to the tip of Joe's finger before looking at the place it pointed to. He then joined Joe in silence and that mouth-open shock face that humans always do. Not very attractive. It's a wolf, Joe tried to say. I think his mind had become a little overwhelmed by this whole experience. I was about 10 feet away and posing in one of my innumerable great poses a giant wolf can take. Cam's first thought was not for the weapon he had in his hand. I could see that his first thought was of worshipping the splendour of the animal in front of him. Sadly, that did last too long, as eventually he lifted the gun and fired 2 shots. They both hit, but I stood proud in front of him, knowing that they would not get too deep through my fluff and flesh. They would soon come out, and then that would be it. No more bullets, no more ways out. The end. I dropped my head and faced the men, hiding my neck, flattening my ears and lifting my lips. I snarled and verbalised my predator's nature. I thought this would end the men's freeze and they would be easy meat. Cam reached for Joe's jaw and turned his face to meet his. Whispering went on. They were fucking formulating a plan. The next moment, Cam threw the gun and drew the bow. He was so close to releasing the arrow that it would have been an utter bastard to get out of me at this range. Luckily, I closed the distance as he drew and I ripped the bow from his grasp, tasting blood. The arrow had fallen from it to the ground and the bow was in bits. Joe had taken this moment to take a knife from his belt and move towards me from behind. This was well timed and I had to turn to snap at him quickly. He flinched into a crouch. He now held the knife in front of him as he backed out with Cam bleeding behind him. They both stared at me with wide eyes and left the clearing, turning into the thickets of woods around them. What the fuck were they doing? They must have realised that they had no chance of getting away. They must know that, but they didn't stop. They kept on trying. They were great. This could even be more fun. I was struggling to break them. Oh, how I love it when I struggle so. They have no weapons, no chance, but they had that very human invention, hope. Fucking hope. Laugh out loud. Well, it leads me to have exceptional fun. There was no way I was letting them relax. I was driving them before me now as safely as I could. They would have to develop some plan because they would not keep this pace up for long. As they ran and panicked, I would come into sight every now and again just to remind them that they were done. They must have felt that they could outrun me at some point. They slowed their pace significantly and tried to walk in near silence in constant vigilance. They both sweetly held their little knifey wises in their hand. I suppose anything to give them comfort would be wanted in this situation. I made my way ahead of them and thought about my next move. I was thinking with Finn. They were getting closer to being in a safe place, so I needed to do something pretty soon or the fun would be over. I'm sure that none of us really wanted that. This must be the first time they felt truly alive. Apparently, humans only feel alive when close to death, or some nonsense like that. They'd probably only had moments of this feeling up to now, taking the corner too fast in the car and just recovering control, slipping in the bath, taking a danger wank with your family in the other room. This was different. This was 2 hours of knowing you were going to die. They were truly alive in that moment. I had to cut them off and freak them out in another way. It would be awesome to twist the tail once more, to frighten the frightened fucks once again, or just confuse them. Yeah, let's confuse them. That would be way more fun. They came out of the bush into a little clearing where I was sitting in human form. I greeted them with a very British, "What ho, chaps?" as a naked man sitting in the woods chewing on a twig. Their eyes went to the periphery of the space. They were keenly watching along the lines of trees at the edge of the clearing. They listened for what was coming behind them. They must have had some idea that the wolf would charge into the space behind them at any moment. So this clothingless man in front of them was only really a little distraction compared to the toothy monster that ran behind them. Oh well, so they thought. "Hello," I said again in greeting with a wave. They both looked at each other and then at me. Joe nodded but did not speak. Cameron did not take his eyes from the tree line. "I believe you are having a little difficulty at this moment. I mean, well, some big creature is hunting you, is it not?" I asked. Cam, still not taking his eyes off the shrub walls around the space, nodded and agreed, I think. "Uh-huh, it's a wolf," he said. "That, my friend, is not just a wolf. That, my friend, is... dun dun dun! A werewolf." Joe now looked at me with a very quizzical stare, but then returned to his constant search of the tree line. No questions. They both just turned and stared. "So, this thing's a werewolf?" Joe asked. "It's huge, Cam. Have you ever seen a wolf that big?" Cam turned to the two of us. I've never seen a wolf in Utah for a start, and I don't know if it's fear or truth, but the thing seems about twice the size of anything that I've ever heard of. And why is there a naked man in the middle of nowhere after we've been chased by a giant wolf that could have killed us and should have killed us whenever the thing wanted to do so? "I can believe just about anything right now," he said. I spat out my twig and stood in front of them, covered in mud and blood, and smiled while pretending to dust myself off. "Aye, you are being hunted by a werewolf. What does that feel like, to be hunted and not the hunter?" I asked them. The two men looked towards me. They both had a general look of disdain on their faces. "What do you think?" asked Joe. "It sucks," said Cam. "What? Are you not enjoying this? This must be the ultimate rush." "No." I stood up and smiled at them. "Come on, guys. This must be the ultimate feeling, huh? The monster is chasing you guys through the woods. You are fighting for your survival against the odds." To be honest, the arrows fucked things up a bit. That levelled the odds, but then I got pissed off, to be honest. Sadly, this didn't have the terrifying effect I thought it would have. I mean, I tried to do it in a very meaningful manner, but they didn't bite. Joe then just laughed out loud to the woods. I mean, I felt him relax as he stepped forward towards me. "Okay, where is he? You're busted. Where the fuck are the cameras? Hey Cam, we're being punked, man. You got us good, man. You got us good. I love werewolves. That was some setup." The men then started laughing together and congratulating themselves on solving the problem at hand. I could feel the relief wash over them. I stood before them, smiling and looking at the ground, waiting for their moment of revelry to finish. It went calm. "Nope," I said. "No, man, we spotted it, so don't try and hang on to it. Let's just get this done. I know you're upset that we worked it out, but you cannot win them all the time." I looked at him again. "Nope, this is one that I'm about to win, Joe." The two guys looked at each other and I could see them stand there and try and figure out what the fuck was going on. "So wait, you are a standing man, naked in front of us and telling us a werewolf is hunting us?" "Yep." "Okay, man, I don't know what your shtick is, but we all know that werewolves are not real. Are you a mental case or something?" "Well, I've been diagnosed as," I started, but Joe carried on at this point. "Look, I get this all the time. Is it a book or a movie or some shit? Although I love werewolf stories, this is not the right way to go about it for attention. For fuck's sake, I came out here to relax and have a break from all that shit you screwed up, man. I appreciate the effort that you've gone to. I really do, but get out of here and try and do things properly. Phone my fucking agent. Don't hassle me. Jesus, you had us running scared there and shooting at shapes in the dark. You could have died. The wolf puppet thing was super convincing. We could have killed you, for God's sake. Seriously, man, you ruined my holiday, he monologued. So, wait a minute. So, how on earth do you explain the taking down of the elk back there? How do you explain these wounds here in my thigh, I pointed at it, and in my throat, I asked. The two guys moved closer to me as they looked at the areas of damage on my body. What, man? What, are you trying to tell me that you're a werewolf or something? Have you stopped taking your medication? I turned away, laughing and smiling at my posit Fen, who was getting a little annoyed with this situation. Are we gonna kill these two? That may convince them that we're the real thing, he sent. Nah, that's too easy, Fen. I want them to know that I am genuinely the real thing, I sent back through our mindful telepathy. How are we gonna do that? Fen asked. Like this. I absorbed him and transformed before the two men. My back was to them as I started the inflation of my transformation. I roared in my joy as I moved from my petty human form to the beast that truly represented me. I now stood over them in my werewolf form while they stared. It was not the pain-racked transformation of the films, but a near-instant change from man to the werewolf beast. In this form, I stand tall, over 7 feet and fully muscled. I make a scary figure. To add to the foreboding that I offered, my pelt now envelops my body in complete blackness. It absorbs the daylight and makes me a shadow in the darkness before them. The rain now drummed into the ground, and I could hear it roaring through the foliage around me as it made its way to the leaf-littered forest floor. As the water gathered in my coat, I shook myself like a giant dog and felt and saw the water fly away from me in what seemed to be slow motion. I took 2 deep inhalations through my nostrils to sample the scents in the air as it all became still. I opened my amber-jeweled eyes as the shadow and looked down my snout at the 2 men standing there. They looked on in total disbelief, not knowing what to do. Cam lifted his head, made eye contact with me briefly, and then let it drop once more to his chest. And he laughed. Now there was only total unadulterated silence apart from the rain thudding into the muddy ground. I stood staring at the two of them, wanting to see a sign of recognition of what I was from them. I smiled a very toothy smile and looked into the 2 men's respective souls. They were both frozen, Cam's chin pointing at the floor. I could sense the hormone dumps in their respective bodies and the realisation this might be for real, or was it, or could it be? Apoplexy was the name of the day. I shrugged and slowly transformed back to my human form, turning my back on the 2 men. I took my time to complete the process and let them absorb the deal with what had just happened. Joe was the first to react finally. You're a werewolf? You're a goddamn werewolf? Eddie Bravo is gonna shit. He's never gonna wrap his head around this one. Well, thank you for your belief, I started to say as I turned to face him. He unloaded his pistol into my chest. I had not seen him pull it from the lining of his jacket. He fired all 17 9mm slugs into my chest. The shots ravaged my naked body, pounding a bloody hole in my centre. I had no time to dodge or move or do anything clever. I just had to take the entire clip in one quick burst. Oh shit, I got to think as I slowly keeled over backwards, maintaining eye contact with Joe. Well, that wasn't so clever of me, was it? Was my last ponderous as everything went black. I lay, my belly to the sky, still in blackness as my senses came back, and in my head I could hear Fen laughing and giggling and clapping. Clapping can't be an easy sound to make with paws, but he was somehow slow hand clapping me awake. I kept my eyes closed as I sensed around me, trying not to give away the fact that I was back too quick. It's okay, Will. They checked your body and are now waiting for a helicopter to come and get them out. It's going to take a while, so take your time. You're a wee bit lucky they didn't shoot you in the fucking head, eh, you prick? I smiled inside before taking a deep breath and sat up with a shuddering "fuck!" expletive bursting from my lips. The two men were a little aghast as this corpse just sat up and started to swear. I sat now stroking my healing chest as I managed to gather myself for the next few moments. Joe reached for his gun again, which was pushed in his pants, and pulled the thing on me. He stood in his well-trained stance, his pistol aimed at me. I was uninterested in him at this time. My primary purpose was to check whether or not I had my balls, or whether or not they'd been shot off, and it was with huge relief that I found my genitals all attached and happy. Once happy with my physical body, my attention returned to the here and now. Why did you do that? Why, Joe? Jesus, have you any idea how much that shit hurts to sort out? Put the gun down, I ordered, but he stood steadfast in place as I walked towards him. Fen was enjoying himself far too much for this to be good. He was semi-dancing around the clearing, laughing and singing. Would you like to know a secret? He sang at me using the melody from Frozen. Would you like to build a snowman? He was being a dick. I turned to him and, ignoring the two other people there, sang back at him using the same melody. Yes, I'd like to know a secret, because it was the only way he would tell me when he was in this kind of mood. Letting him watch fucking Frozen had been a colossal mistake. Joe has got no bullets came back in my head, but yet again to the same musical refrain. Thank feck for that, I said out loud to the world, not hiding it in any melody from Frozen, but bleating it out there for all to hear. Joe stood in front of me now, still holding the pistol in the same pose he had hit a few minutes ago. The pistol was trained on me as I moved, and he was doing a grand job, as they say in Yorkshire. Now, Joe, you can see what happens when I got shot. It fucking hurts, and then I get better, and that's it. Oh, apart from the fact that you've pissed me off a lot. So my personal advice would be not to shoot me, if you please, again, because I'm really fucking annoyed right now, and if you shoot me again, I think you might get me right fractious. And that's not how you want me to be right now. For heaven's sake, put the gun down, I yelled. He snarled his fury, but I think he knew I was telling the truth. He dropped the gun, but only at a point where it would quickly be retargeted. Thank you, I acknowledged the man, then went and sat on the tree stump at some height from the ground where I could swing my legs back and forth. Now, after all that drama and me being shot, where was I asked him. Cam smirked as he raised his head to address me. So what is it next step in this? Are you going to murder us? He asked. I mean, there is nothing all we can do about it. You, as you say, did the hunting and you won the chase. We are at your mercy. You are quite correct. I did the hunting. I ran you down, and I assume that this is some kind of point of death. I'm not sure. It does not seem as much fun as the chase, but I suppose that should get this over with. I mean, this will be a great trophy to have, won't it? The great Cam and the great Joe above my fire in my trophy room. Can you imagine that as a talking point if I did have friends to actually do any talking with? So what are you saying? You're going to take our heads? You're going to kill me just for fucking fun? How the fuck do you think you're going to get away with that? So you can chat about this shit when you see them above the fireplace? Is that for real? Yeah, that's the idea. Oh, please don't worry. I will be using the meat I will kill as well. It's been a long chase, so I'll need the nutrition for the end of my journey. I have to say, the carnivore diet is definitely working for me, Joe, I said, posing my ripped and muscular body. Thanks for bringing that to my attention in your fascinating podcast series. No problem, he replied with some sarcasm in his tone. It was a little hurtful, to be honest. So, are you guys ready for it then? Are you ready? How do you want to do this? Let me just grab something. I'll just be a moment. I wandered off into the nearby bush and brought out a phone from behind it. The two men watched me walk away and walk back again, and then now I had a phone in my hand. Where did the phone come from? They both stared at me like I was a bit mental. I knew what they were thinking. Oh, sorry, you're wondering where I kept the phone. It's embarrassing. I've got a collar when I need it. I just, between you and me, yeah, I know it sounds weird. What you guys thinking? I stuck this phone up my ass or something? No, things fall out during transformation. Look, I know about this. Oh, and the collar's nothing kinky. You know, it's not like a BDSM slave collar or anything. It's just fucking useful sometimes. There, I let you into the secret of life as a modern werewolf. I now took the phone up to my face and smiled at the pair of them looking through the device. Hey, I'm videoing you guys. Please wave at the camera. What the hell is going on? Are you going to murder us and film it? Joe asked. World star! I smiled. I carefully set the camera up on the stump that I'd been seated on and went over and pushed and prodded the two men in front of the camera. I walked back to the stump and moved and adjusted the angle a little and asked them to move to the left slightly so I could fit us all into the frame. The two men were, well, incredulous at this treatment, but did not say anything. Maybe they did not believe that they were going through this or letting themselves go through this to be murdered in front of the world. Are you ready? I asked, and the two men, once I got the camera angles correct, were kind of ready. I then stood between the two of them, my arms around their respective shoulders. I hugged them into me and asked them to smile, as in my head I got to the 7th part of the 10-second countdown. Smile, I asked them, and heard the shutter sound effect click. Thanks guys, I told them. 1 or 2 more please, I asked. I'm going to werewolf out, so don't panic. I need a photo in that form with you guys. The pictures were a bit rubbish, to be honest. I changed between them before the 5-second count of the camera. They struggled to get clear of me, but I held them in as a group, and they wouldn't stand still or take a significant part in the process. But I got 1 or 2 shots which were okay-ish, and I'll make them available in the future. When I'd finished with the photos, I turned back to the men and looked through the phone, smiling at the images on it. I did actually laugh out loud at a few of them because it was so funny, seeing these 2 brave men in almost catatonic states of fear. Thanks guys, I said in a friendly tone and started putting my phone back into my hefty leather collar. That was fun. The 2 men just stood staring at me with mouths open. I waved at them and became the wolf. They waited. They waited for the inevitable, the leap onto the frozen prey, the ripping and tearing of live flesh from their bones, a slow death as I eat them, the death at the hands of a beast. I stood and stared at them, eye to eye for a long period of time. Then I turned and disappeared into the tree line. I'd actually got my trophies. Why would I kill him? I like Joe's podcast. Cam seemed okay too. I ran as the flopping blades of the helicopter started to be heard. I never heard him recount his tale on his show, which was pretty sad. That's it. That's the final part of Joe Rogan meeting, eating and greeting. Hope you really enjoyed it. Please like, please share, please do nice things with it. Comment, get the notifications, and of course, if you could subscribe, that would be wonderful. Love you all. This is Will, your werewolf, and I'm off ski now. New adventures are on the way. Let's see what they bring. Bye!